What really changes after 80 that no one talks about? Most people think life just slows down, maybe gets quieter, simpler. But the truth is, life after 80 brings a whole different reality. Some parts are enlightening, others are incredibly hard to face. And unless someone prepares you for them, they can arrive like a storm, sudden, confusing, and deeply personal. This conversation isn't meant to frighten you. It's meant to offer support, to shed light, and to remind you, you are not alone. Because when we speak honestly about what aging truly feels like, emotionally, physically, socially, we take back our dignity and our power. If you're over 55, or if you love someone who is, knowing what really shifts after 80 can change everything about how you live and how you connect. So, what are these truths that no one wants to say out loud? Let's begin with emotional loneliness. It's not about being alone. In fact, many older adults are surrounded by family, caregivers, or friendly neighbors. But emotional loneliness hits differently. It's that quiet ache of feeling disconnected, unseen, or irrelevant, even in a crowded room. Conversations become brief, polite, or superficial. You begin to feel like people are simply checking off a box when they visit. Over time, the emotional distance grows deeper than any physical space ever could. This isn't about resentment, it's about longing, a longing to be truly heard, to be understood, to matter. After 80, you've seen things, wars, inventions, heartbreaks, cultural shifts, that most people around you haven't lived through. But when you speak, you're often met with distracted nods, rushed responses, or worse, silence. You're treated like a relic from another time instead of a well of wisdom. That hurts in a way that's hard to describe. It makes you question your voice, your value, and whether anyone truly wants to know who you are beneath the surface. This is where emotional resilience becomes everything. The Stoics, who knew a thing or two about hardship, believed we must find peace inside ourselves when the outside world grows cold. That doesn't mean pretending it doesn't hurt. It means acknowledging the pain and still choosing to show up with grace. It means learning to nourish your spirit not just through others, but through books, nature, music, reflection. Through moments of deep, honest self-connection. Emotional independence becomes not a luxury, but a form of survival. And it's a quiet strength that many elders master, even if no one sees it. Take Walter, for instance, an 84-year-old retired teacher from Arizona. After his wife passed, his kids still called and visited, but something had changed. The energy was different. The warmth, the patience, it was less. He didn't blame them. He knew they were busy. But he couldn't help feeling like a shadow in his own home, so he started something radical. He began writing letters, long, thoughtful reflections, and mailing them to his grandchildren. At first, no one replied. Then slowly, letters came back. 1, then 3, then all of them. It wasn't about the letters. It was about him reminding them and himself that his voice still mattered. That's the first truth. Emotional loneliness isn't cured by presence alone. It's cured by connection, the kind you have to fight for sometimes, the kind that says, I'm still here, and I still have something to say. And this is just the beginning, because what follows emotional loneliness are truths even harder to name. Chronic physical pain that becomes a daily companion, the slow erosion of independence, once taken for granted, the frustration of others making choices for you, and the cruel reality that society begins to overlook you, no matter how alive you still feel inside. But here's the powerful part. Recognizing these truths doesn't mean giving in. It means staring them down with clear eyes and a stronger heart. It means saying, you might change how I move, how I live, even how I'm seen, but you won't change who I am. If you've made it this far in life, you already carry more strength, more stories, and more soul than most people will ever know. So keep going. Keep speaking. Keep reminding the world there is still so much left in you. After Walter lost his wife, his world didn't just get quieter. It changed in a way that's hard to explain. His children still called, once or twice a week, but the conversations were no longer about dreams, memories, or laughter. They became check-ins, schedules, logistics. One day, he told me, they talk to me like I'm a fragile object, not a person, but I still think, I still feel. So Walter decided to stop waiting for connection to come to him. He began writing letters, real ones. Not just updates, but long, heartfelt reflections, questions, and stories from his life. And slowly, something beautiful happened. His grandchildren began writing back. One letter turned into two, then into a steady exchange. Not because they suddenly changed, but because he found a new way to be heard. In those letters, he didn't just reclaim a voice, he rediscovered purpose. If you've ever felt that quiet ache, the kind of loneliness that weighs on you even when you're not alone, you're not broken, and you're certainly not alone. Many people after 80 feel this deep emotional drift, day after day. But here's the truth, you don't have to stay in that place. Sometimes, healing starts with one bold act, starting a conversation, writing a memory, telling someone how you really feel. Even when the world feels too fast, too distracted, or too distant, your heart still matters. And when you show up, you go from being known for your talents, your beliefs, your passions, to being defined by what's slipping away. The medications on the counter, the stairs you can't climb, the appointments, the limitations. Friends and family mean well, but they begin to speak to you differently. You're no longer Joe the artist or Alina the baker. You're Grandpa Joe who shouldn't drive anymore, or Grandma Alina who needs help remembering things. That subtle shift cuts deeper than most realize. It tells you, without saying a word, that your identity is fading, that your story has been reduced to a set of concerns. But you are more than your body, more than your limitations. Your identity isn't just wrapped up in what you can do today. It's built on a lifetime of moments, choices, values, and love. When society stops asking what you think or feel, you have every right to speak louder, not in volume, but in intention. Because your story is not over, your voice is not outdated. Alina from Oregon knew this. At 82, after closing her bakery, she began to fade into the background. No one asked for her recipes anymore. No one called for advice. She felt like a ghost in her own life. But instead of surrendering to that silence, she began writing one life lesson each day for her granddaughter. It was quiet at first, just a notebook. Then it became a blog. A year later, it became a printed memoir, now shared in her local library. Alina didn't wait to be seen. She made herself visible again, not with noise, but with truth. Losing identity after 80 doesn't mean forgetting who you are. It means remembering more fiercely than ever that your worth doesn't fade with age. It deepens. You are the sum of every lesson, every loss, every triumph. And if the world forgets that, remind it. Write, speak, share, push back against invisibility with your presence. Not because you owe the world anything, but because you deserve to be fully, beautifully seen. If this resonates with you, if you're still here reading and reflecting, know this, your story matters. Not just what you were, but who you are now asterisk. So stand in that truth, even when it feels like no one is watching, because you are still here, still valuable, still fully, undeniably you. Let's move forward. The third truth few speak openly about is isolation and emotional disconnection. What happens when the phone no longer rings, when the doorbell stays silent, and when the people you once counted on for conversation slowly fade into the background of busyness or distance? For many over the age of 80, this isn't a passing moment, it's a daily reality. Loneliness isn't just a mood. It becomes a physical ache, a weight in your chest, a silence that fills your home and echoes into your thoughts. And the hardest part is, this isn't always caused by a lack of love. Often, it's simply the slow disappearance of presence, physical, emotional, social. At this age, friends have passed away, moved into care, or are too unwell to connect. Children and grandchildren may live far away, juggling careers and families of their own. And for those facing mobility challenges, the idea of leaving the house or attending an event starts to feel like a daunting task. So slowly, without meaning to, you decline invitations, you stop calling, and you find reasons to stay in. The four walls of your home begin to feel like the boundaries of your entire world. But here's a vital truth that never fades. We are wired for connection. The need to be heard, to be seen, to be valued, it doesn't vanish with age. If anything, it grows more essential. Studies show that older adults who maintain meaningful emotional connections live longer, have stronger memories, and experience higher life satisfaction. Yet society rarely encourages those bonds past a certain age. The world wrongly assumes that you've outgrown the need for deep connection, but the heart doesn't age the way the body does. It still longs for warmth, companionship, laughter, and understanding. The disconnection may not be loud, but it slowly steals joy, confidence, and the will to participate in life. And over time, that silence can start to sound like a verdict, that you don't matter anymore. But the Stoics taught us a different way. They reminded us that while we can't control whether people show up, we can always choose how we show up. Leonard, a retired mechanic in Colorado, lived through this exact struggle. After his wife died and his children moved to other states, he went nearly 2 weeks without hearing another familiar voice. He told me it felt like he didn't exist. But one morning, looking out his window, he noticed a neighbor struggling with a broken mailbox. Leonard stepped outside and offered help. That one small act led to a conversation, then another. Soon they were sharing coffee, running errands, helping each other in simple ways. Leonard didn't need to be surrounded by people. He just needed to feel like someone still saw him, and through that single gesture, he reconnected to life. That's the power we all hold, even in solitude. We can choose to open the door, write the letter, ask the question, offer a hand. The real hardship of aging isn't the physical slowing down, it's the emotional silence that can quietly take hold. But even in that silence, there's power. Power to speak, power to reach, power to remind yourself that you are still part of the living world, still capable of offering something real. And now we arrive at the fourth truth, loss of autonomy. What happens when you no longer choose what you eat, when you sleep, or even where you go? For many over 80, this creeping loss of control doesn't come all at once. It begins with well-meaning gestures. A loved one starts doing the grocery shopping. A caregiver decides when it's time for a nap. Your adult children schedule all your appointments. Bit by bit, your independence gets absorbed into someone else's routine. It's about having the freedom to decide how your day unfolds, even if someone helps you carry it out. When that choice is taken away, or subtly discouraged, it chips away at your dignity. You begin to feel like the world no longer trusts you with your own life. And over time, this can lead to frustration, helplessness, and a slow crumbling of self-worth. Psychologists call this learned dependency. When someone is repeatedly told, through actions or words, that they're incapable of making their own choices, they begin to believe it. They stop offering opinions. They stop participating. They say, "It's fine, let them handle it," even when they're still perfectly capable of contributing. And here's the tragic part: this passivity doesn't just affect mood. It accelerates physical and cognitive decline. When the mind and body aren't invited to stay engaged, they begin to shut down. But this, too, can be challenged. You may not control every aspect of your care, but you can still advocate for your preferences, voice your opinions, and ask to be included in decisions. Even something as small as choosing your own clothing, selecting meals, or deciding when to rest can restore a sense of agency. Because autonomy isn't about grand acts of independence, it's about preserving the small, meaningful choices that make you. Aging doesn't have to mean surrendering your voice. In fact, now is the time to speak it with more clarity than ever before. To remind those around you and yourself that even if you walk more slowly or need help carrying groceries, your mind, your values, and your will still matter. Your life is not something to be managed. It's something to be honored. And that begins with reclaiming your right to choose, to speak, and to be seen not as someone fading, but as someone still fully alive. Stoic philosophy reminds us that our true dignity lies not in the events that happen to us, but in how we choose to respond. Even when physical freedoms become limited with age, the freedom to speak, to choose, and to participate in decisions about our own lives remains sacred. As Epictetus once wrote, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus can get the better of my will." This powerful mindset is more than just words. It's a way of living with self-respect, even when the world begins to treat you differently. Take Clara, an 83-year-old retired nurse from Illinois. When she moved in with her daughter's family, she was thankful for the care, but quietly overwhelmed by how much control she had lost. Every meal was chosen for her, every activity planned, even her clothing laid out just to make things easier. For months, she stayed silent, smiling and nodding, not wanting to cause trouble. But inside, she felt like she was vanishing. One day, with quiet courage, she sat down with her daughter and said, "I may be slower, but I'm not gone. Please let me be part of the decisions again." That simple, honest conversation transformed their relationship. Clara began picking her own clothes, helping plan meals, and deciding how she wanted to approach her physical therapy. The changes were small, but the emotional impact was profound. Her sense of agency returned. She felt seen again, not just cared for, but respected. That's what autonomy truly means after 80, not doing everything alone, but being heard, involved, and treated as someone whose voice still carries meaning. Which brings us to the fifth truth: disappearing social identity. As we grow older, many of the roles that once defined us begin to fade. We're no longer introduced as the teacher, the doctor, the volunteer, the coach, or the parent who keeps the household running. And when those titles slip away, something deeper starts to shift. You may look in the mirror and quietly wonder, who am I now? This isn't about ego, it's about purpose. It's about waking up and having a reason to participate in the world, a reason to feel seen. Too often, society sends the message that after a certain age, your job is simply to rest and fade into the background. Conversations speed past you. Technology becomes alien. Gatherings happen without you, not because people don't care, but because they forget that behind your gray hair is a lifetime of experience and wisdom. Without meaning to, families and communities start speaking for you instead of with you. And slowly, some seniors begin to retreat, not because they want to, but because the world stops listening. But here's the unshakable truth. Your worth is not based on what you do. It's rooted in who you are. And even if the world forgets your former title, your inner value never expires. Stoic philosophy tells us that while roles come and go, character remains. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." You don't need a title to lead, to teach, or to impact others. You simply need to show up as yourself, with kindness, with courage, with the wisdom earned through decades of living. Leonard, an 86-year-old widower from North Carolina, lived this reality. He spent months in silence, staring out the window, asking himself what his purpose was now. Then, one Sunday morning, he picked up his Bible and walked to a nearby nursing home. He asked the staff if he could read aloud for anyone who wanted to listen. 5 people showed up that day. By the end of the month, it was 20. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it to serve, to reclaim a voice the world had started to overlook. And in doing so, he found a new identity, not based on title, but on presence. Aging is not the end of your story. It is the evolution of it. Who you are is not tied to what you used to do. It's tied to how you choose to show up now. Whether through a kind word, a shared memory, a written note, or a listening ear, you still have impact. You still have relevance. And your life, your voice, your presence still matters in ways no one else can replicate. One day, Leonard began writing handwritten letters, not to old friends or family, but to young people in his town. Simple, thoughtful letters filled with encouragement, wisdom, and kindness. He didn't expect much from it. He just wanted to give something meaningful. But something remarkable happened. Those letters started circulating. A few teachers read them aloud in classrooms. Some parents shared them on social media. Slowly, Leonard became known not just as a retired pastor, but as the man whose words brought peace and perspective. His role had changed, but his value never did. And that's the lesson we often forget. After 80, your identity is no longer about the titles you held or the work you once did. It's about who you still are and what you still carry inside. You are still someone with stories worth hearing, wisdom worth sharing, and love worth giving. Your perspective, your presence, your voice, they still matter. So if the world forgets to ask for your insight, don't wait. Remind it. Step forward. Speak up, write, call, wave, engage. Because disappearing is not your destiny. Being seen for who you are now is. Let's talk about what this all comes down to. Living beyond 80 is a tremendous gift, but it doesn't arrive wrapped in simplicity. It comes with layers of reflection, loss, and quiet transformation. It's not just the aches or slower movements. It's about how time gently but firmly reshapes your world. Friends pass on. Your daily routines shift. The energy you once had becomes more selective, and sometimes more precious. You may find yourself waking up to a different kind of silence, one where familiar voices are missing, where certainty feels out of reach. And yet, what lies beneath all this change is something profoundly human and hopeful. Life after 80 is not the end of meaning, it's the beginning of a deeper kind of purpose. What matters now is not speed or productivity. It's presence. It's grace. It's how you carry yourself through each day and how you continue to show up for yourself and for others. These truths we've explored aren't meant to discourage you. They're not here to weigh you down. They're here to illuminate a path forward. A path where you are still in control of how you respond to life, how you love, how you connect. Because you didn't reach 80 or 85 or 90 by accident. You got here by enduring, adapting, growing. You got here through strength, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, but always steady. And even now, in this season, there are people who still need you. People who may never say it out loud, but who are deeply touched by your example, your resilience, and your kindness. Never underestimate the impact of simply being who you are. Not the version of you from the past, but the version that stands here today, wiser, more grounded, and more valuable than ever. As you reflect on the 5 realities we've explored, emotional loneliness, loss of identity, disconnection, loss of autonomy, and fading social roles, try not to see them as endings. See them as invitations. Invitations to redefine your role in the world, to reconnect with what matters most, and to keep creating, contributing, and becoming. Life didn't stop at 80. It simply changed form. And there's still so much beauty and meaning left to uncover. Thank you for being here with us today. If something you read resonated with you,